Well, happy Wednesday, hump day, everybody. Welcome to the Real Results Show. I am Jen Maleka here filling in for Piper Gibson today, and I am joined with fellow FDN practitioner Ryan Monahan, we are going to be talking all about how to heal the thyroid naturally so that you can get real long-term sustainable results either for yourself or for your clients. And we've got a lot of great information in store for you guys today. So all of our viewers, listeners out there, if you struggle with a thyroid issue or if you work with thyroid clients, let us know in the comments below. Because this, I think, Ryan, it's such a huge topic these days. I see everybody talking about thyroid, right?
And it seems like, every week a new client comes to me with a thyroid issue. It's a really, really common disorder.
It is. It's like a hot topic on a lot of podcasts that I've been listening to, a lot of books lately, and then our clients that are coming to us. And I get questions about this all the time. So our goal is to help you guys out on here to learn more about the thyroid in general and what are some approaches to help heal it naturally. And if you want more information on this in general, feel free to drop the word thyroid below the video today. We're going to be giving you the HPA Access Hormone Guide and video companion to go along with that, because that is a huge piece to understanding, the big picture with thyroid is also understanding the HPA axis and hormone overall relationship with thyroid. As I just found with one of my new clients that I got the other day, she's been treated for thyroid, working with another practitioner, and the rest of the HPA axis and hormone stuff hasn't really been addressed for her. So when we ran some lab tests the other day, it just brought out so many more pieces to the puzzle that were hugely helpful. So let's get into it, Ryan. And you have such a fascinating thyroid story to share, which is part of how you got into doing this work. So I want you to let's kick off and tell our viewers a little bit about your thyroid story, because when I saw you share about this somewhat recently, I was floored by your thyroid levels. So tell our viewers what happened with you.
It was a long and crazy journey. And the short of it is that it took me nearly 10 years visiting over 40 different medical professionals to finally get an answer to what was going on with my health. And it really started around my sophomore year of college or so, when I was experiencing all kinds of different symptoms, including chronic fatigue. It was really bad. I would have to set 3 alarms to wake myself up in the morning. And that was when the alarm bells, pun intended, really started to go off for me. And it really just kept going downhill from there with depression. I was dealing with really debilitating allergies. So I was constantly on different antihistamines and inhalers and nasal sprays and seeing all these different ear, nose, and throat specialists and trying to get to the root of it, right? I was also dealing with constipation, all kinds of weird skin rashes that started showing up. So that it seemed like all these separate or different symptoms, but in fact, eventually I would find out they had a common root cause, but it took me a really long time to figure that out. So for nearly my entire 20s, I lived with chronic fatigue and depression, and would often sleep for 12 hours a day. And on the weekends, I would just lay in bed all weekend. It was pretty miserable. It was kind of a living hell. And I had no idea what was going on for forever, right?
Yeah.
And then eventually I found a doctor when I was living in Atlanta at the time, who was also licensed in Chinese medicine. And he was the first doctor that had ever thought to run a thyroid panel for me. And at the time, I had no idea. I'd heard of a thyroid, but I didn't know really what the implications were, what the thyroid's role was in the body. But, he thought it was a good idea to run a thyroid panel, calls me up the next day with the results and says that I have Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And of course, I Googled that right away, and I see it's an autoimmune condition to the thyroid where your immune system is attacking your thyroid, and then that causes the thyroid to slow down, and as a result, slows down all the metabolic processes in your body. So you had talked about how crazy my thyroid numbers were, and to give you guys listening a perspective on that, there's a marker called TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone, and it's probably the most commonly used marker to gauge thyroid function. Typically, you're looking at an optimal range of about 0.5 to a 2.5. And conventionally speaking, you'll see that a little wider, maybe about a 0.5 to a 5, right? And the higher the number, the slower your thyroid, right? So it's kind of like a reverse. It's kind of the opposite of what you'd think it'd be. So my TSH, when I was first diagnosed with hypothyroidism, was 150.
It's so insane.
It was 150, and the doctor basically said, and I'm kind of paraphrasing, but said, I can't believe you're even able to get up in the morning.
Yeah.
And it really felt like that for so many years. It was sheer willpower that really got me up and going.
That's so crazy. And I just want to like pause there for a moment because like literally when I first saw you mention your TSH number, my jaw was floored. Like I was like, this, how are you even alive? You know, how did your body not give up on you? But also, I think it's fascinating that you said, you know, that you had gone to like 40 different professionals trying to figure out what was wrong with you.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting is that the common, like the average statistic for an autoimmune diagnosis, because a lot of people struggle with getting an autoimmune diagnosis in general, like the average is, I think, 4 or 5 years and about like, you know, 8 practitioners. You went to 40.
Yeah.
Which is even more insane. And, you know, in FDN, as we learn, like that's the cycle of trial and error, right? That we see so many of our clients go through and that a lot of us have experienced too, is that you bounce from practitioner to practitioner, trying various like treatments and therapies and remedies, looking for the solution. And sometimes some of those things help us maybe feel better a little bit, but nothing was really maybe resolving the big picture of what was like happening with you. And I can only imagine, you know, probably a lot of our viewers can share this experience with us too, because I know that that was my experience as well. So, so continue on with your story, and like, so you finally got some answers,
Yeah.
and then, I mean, you're an FDN practitioner. So where did becoming an FDN practitioner kind of fit into the story for you, and how's that helped you?
Yeah, so after getting diagnosed with Hashimoto's, you know, I was put on Synthroid, and it changed my life overnight, right? It was actually the first time since I was a kid that I could remember waking up first thing in the morning with the sunrise. I mean, literally over one night. It was the first night I got on medication. And like, I
Wow.
was like almost nearly in tears just because I just couldn't believe that that was the problem the whole time, you know? And I went about my life kind of just as normal after that point. I didn't really do anything to change my diet or lifestyle. You know, I was really, even though I had this diagnosis, I was still really under the impression that there was nothing else I could do other than take this medication for the rest of my life, and that was going to be it, right? But then what happened after about 6 months or so is a lot of my symptoms started coming to the surface again, right?
Mm.
Started getting fatigued, depressed, started, you know, my allergy issues started coming back like full force. And that's when I really started to think that something else had to be going on here. I just felt this intuitive sense that there may be something deeper going on. And it just didn't make intuitive sense to me that the thyroid would stop working or that the immune system would be attacking my thyroid just randomly or for no reason. So that's when I started doing my own research to try to see if there could be a cause behind this, and try to sort of reverse engineer the problem. So again, I got on Google and I typed in something like what causes thyroid issues or what causes Hashimoto's. And if I remember correctly, I think the first thing that came up was Isabella Wentz's website. And I found out that she had a book on dietary and lifestyle interventions for addressing autoimmune conditions to the thyroid. So someone had written a book about this, and it just blew my mind. I had no idea.
Right.
So I immediately got that book on Amazon and just absorbed it like a sponge. And it totally changed my life because I had never considered that I can have some control over this, that I could change my diet and lifestyle and fix my adrenals and work on my gut health and detoxification all the things that we do as FDNs,
Mhm.
and that can help to restore balance and and restore the body back to optimal function. So that was really the beginning of this interest in becoming a functional practitioner. Is when I read that book. It really, I knew when I was one or two chapters in, like, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
And people need this information, right?
They
People need, yeah.
Yeah, they totally do, and I find that with my clients too that come to me, it's like they're out there using Doctor Google is what we call him, right?
Mhm.
Searching for
Yeah.
answers, and there's so much information, like, there's a lot of this information that, out there on the internet, and some of it's good and some of it's not so great. But I think even, as health coaches are out there searching for information for their clients, or as our clients are searching for information to help themselves, that they don't know how to take that information all the times and apply it to themselves or their client, right? It's like, how do I figure out exactly what is right for me, which is kind of the beauty of what we do as FDNs is it's all about bio individuality and personalizing things that work best for the individual based on some of the lab testing that we do. And, your intuition was on point. You knew that there was something bigger to the problem, as we kind of alluded to when we started this show today. HPA axis dysfunction, for example, is a result of or contributor to, thyroid dysfunction. So, if you guys are interested in learning more about that, drop the word thyroid below to get our HPA axis hormone guide and video that goes along with that to learn more about this interaction and just kind of starting to peel away the layers of the onion to look at the bigger picture. And so, Ryan, for you, like, fast forward, you made a decision that you were going to become a functional practitioner based on reading Isabella Wentz's book. She's a great leader in this area. And then landed into becoming a functional diagnostic nutritioner practitioner, part of our community. And how did that help you further along in your journey? And then how is that helping you with other clients at this time too?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one thing that appealed to me about the FDN program was this systemic kind of like systems approach to healing the body, of working on diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction. It brings together all of those foundations with the added benefit or the power of getting some actual lab data, some information
Mhm.
to guide a plan of action forward, right? Because as you said, we really have to take bio individuality into account. We can't just slap the same template on somebody just because we've read in a book that vitamin D or zinc might help with autoimmune issues. That may not be the case for between one client and another client,
Right.
right? So I really wanted that very kind of nuanced, specific approach to be guided by lab data and information, and that's really the power of test, don't guess. So going through the training program, we get to even run some of these labs on ourselves and see some of these contributors to dysfunction in the body. If I'm not mistaken, when I first ran the BioHealth 401, the gut pathogen test years ago, there was an H. pylori infection, which is known to have an association with Hashimoto's as a
Mhm.
potential trigger, right? So that was really eye-opening to me, and I just wanted to keep going further and further down the rabbit hole, and becoming an expert on all these different tests. And as I started working with more and more clients, I was able to, it's so rewarding to see people's eyes light up when they get to see these results, because they can actually see something concrete that may correlate with what they're going through, and that can be life-changing for people, right? It really really can. So it's incredibly rewarding to get to do what we get to do for a living, because we do get to actually be hopefully the last stop for somebody,
Mhm.
instead of continuing down that cycle of trial and error and guessing and kind of throwing a dart at the board. We finally, I often tell clients that I work with that this is going to be the most comprehensive investigation into your health that you've ever done, and I really do stand by that.
Yeah.
No one's ever challenged me on that, right? They're always like, wow, this is like amazing, right? Like, we're looking at cortisol and gut health and liver function, and it's the first time, you almost always in someone's life, that they've gotten to see everything that's going on, so that we can put all those puzzle pieces together and see the big picture and then get them results quickly,
I
right?
just,
Which is what people want, right? They want to get better
yep.
like now, like yesterday.
Exactly. Especially when you're like struggling to get out of bed every single morning and you're just watching your life like slip through your hands, essentially, and that's exactly, I mean, it was such I feel so grateful for the work that we get to do. Like this client that I had the results review session with on Monday, like I mentioned, she had been diagnosed with a thyroid issue, and it takes some time. Like when we send them the test results, or test kits, and then they do them at home, and there's like a delay in getting the results back just because of the timing to get the results back. So I hadn't really talked to her in maybe 4 to 6 weeks, and when we met on Monday, she told me that they had doubled her thyroid medication up to 90 milligrams because she was not feeling better, not getting any results. And I said, so they doubled it in July. And I said, well, when they doubled it, are you feeling any different? She said, no. And I was like, well, maybe thyroid isn't your primary issue. Like, let's look and see what's going on in the lab tests. And, like as FDNs, we don't practice medicine. We don't diagnose or treat anything specifically. We kind of work on all the systems of the body non-specifically. And we educate our clients about what's going on in their body and uncovering those healing opportunities. And so with her, I ran like a Dutch test on her. She had the highest estrogen levels I have probably ever seen for a menstruating female on the Dutch test. Her cortisol rhythm was completely flat. So she's got HPA axis dysfunction going on. She had a couple of parasites and bacteria overgrowth going on in the gut. We could see that her estrogen metabolism was messed up. On her HTMA test, she's not detoxing very well. She's deficient in selenium, which is one of those like critical nutrients for thyroid. Also, and we talked about how, like thyroid hormone, a lot of it is converted, like T4 is converted into T3 in the liver and in the gut. And these are two areas of her body that were dysfunctional based on what we saw in the testing. And so maybe she's just not converting well, and she's not absorbing nutrients very well to produce thyroid hormone. And she's got this HPA axis stuff that's going on. And she was like in awe the whole time. She's like, why hasn't anybody ever looked at this before? But she's like, also at the same time, I'm so grateful to have all these pieces to the puzzle. And so Ryan, what are some of, working with thyroid cases, or people that come to you with, thyroid issues, what are some of your favorite tests to run to help you collect clues to their, their health crime scene, as I like to call it?
That's awesome. I haven't heard that one before. Very cool. I'm gonna steal that one from you.
Yeah.
So you make a really good point. And this is something, and I do work with a lot of clients with thyroid issues. And one thing that I really try to drive home is that your thyroid isn't the problem. The thyroid dysfunction isn't the problem. It's the result of the problem. So you'll often hear this analogy being made of the thyroid in the body being like the canary in the coal mine.
Mm.
So you may find that you're dealing with hypothyroidism or Hashimoto's, but oftentimes it's the case that that's just the first layer. And that's your body's way of slowing down your metabolism to get you to preserve resources so that you can slow down and heal. But that doesn't tell you what's causing your body to do that, right? So that we have to go deeper into looking at how all of these systems interplay with each other, right? Like you had mentioned nutrient deficiencies, right? Like selenium is a really critical nutrient for converting T4 to T3. It's also been shown in research to lower TPO antibodies, right? And like you also had mentioned, liver function is so critical because that's also where the majority of this conversion happens. So that's an approach that I feel like is often too missing from the conventional perspective, is if you're just addressing thyroid health alone and you don't understand how everything in the body is interconnected, you might not get very far, and you might not get the results that you want to see. Right?
Exactly.
So, but to answer your question, the lab tests that I most often run with my clients would be, pretty much everyone right off the bat is going to get a GI map, because especially with thyroid issues, I find such a high instance of infections in the gut, especially with H. pylori, and also a parasite called Blastocystis hominis is very common. And I actually ended up having both of those, right?
Same here.
Yeah, I see that all the time with Hashimoto's, right? And it's amazing what you'll see when you use herbal approaches to help a client eradicate those infections, that you'll often see antibodies come down significantly, right?
Mhm.
Not to say that's going to work 100% of the time, but that's where, again, we have to keep peeling back the layers. So I also really love HTMA testing to look at macro mineral balance. And it's probably most often the case with someone that's got a slow metabolism and a lot of fatigue, that you'll see deficiencies in sodium and potassium, like really low electrolyte levels. Like the
Mhm.
person just has no spark, right? And so we can help someone to restore those electrolyte minerals, and that also helps their cells be more sensitive to thyroid hormone too, right?
Right.
So again, another example of how everything is interconnected. You might also see on an HTMA that someone has a lot of mercury and aluminum or other heavy metals that can interfere with thyroid function, right? So toxins, infections, often see like flatline cortisol, not uncommon to see that either. And you know, that's not a good thing. That again, that represents like no spark in the body. Cortisol is super important for, it's an anti-inflammatory. It helps our body release blood sugar and it gives us energy, right? So these are all different areas that we want to look at between hormones and minerals and nutrients and gut health. Another one that I often see that I feel like is maybe one of the most overlooked is in running organic acid testing. It's a urine test that is particularly good at looking at mold patterns and like fungal and mold overgrowth. I would say in a good 20 to 30% of my thyroid clients and my Hashi clients that I'll see a pattern of mold overgrowth.
Interesting.
And yeah, and I this is something I talked about with Piper on the show a couple months ago, and we were focusing on mold specifically, but I actually feel that there's a strong potential connection between the two. And when I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's back in 2012, I was living in a house with a mold problem.
Oh,
So I can't prove a direct correlation per se, but I do have a strong suspicion that it was maybe a strong contributing factor or trigger in developing an autoimmune issue.
sure. It's an environmental toxin, right? And
Exactly.
mold was when I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, I was also living in a moldy home.
Hmm.
And I think but this is where we look at, as FDNs, we kind of look at all of the pieces of the puzzle. Like one of the things that Reed really emphasizes as we go through through the training program is forming an impression about somebody. So when even during our onboarding process, like we're asking them questions. Well, where did you grow up? What is your environment like? Getting to understand. I would say that, I work with quite a few thyroid people, and mold is not always an issue with them because the thyroid is so linked to all these other, bigger picture systemic issues that we're talking about. But there are those cases out there, and mold can manifest not only in Hashimoto's and thyroid issues, but other autoimmune conditions and things like that as well too. And I love using an organic acids test to dive a little bit deeper with somebody. If we're not making progress, and if I don't suspect mold right away, like we'll start with some of our, foundation testing that we do. And then if they're not making progress in the way that they should be, then I'll dive deeper and say, okay, let's do some organic acids testing and see what other hidden healing opportunities. And like maybe they aren't aware that they've ever had mold. And so that's where a test like that can be really helpful
Yep.
in those scenarios too.
I totally agree that the best approach is to go after the low hanging fruit first
Mhm.
before going after some of these more complex health issues, right? So
Yeah,
we don't always want to create a problem where there isn't one, right? And
right.
oftentimes, we can get 80% or more of the way there by running some of these foundational labs like hormone testing and gut testing,
Mhm.
and implementing these foundational, you know, um, lifestyle principles between, diet and lifestyle is what really does most of the heavy lifting and what gets a client to stay well, right?
Yes.
Ultimately, what we want in the long term, hopefully we'll have to be the last person that our clients see, right? That's like the best thing that we can hope for.
Definitely. So again, for anybody that just joined on with us, if you guys are interested in learning more about thyroid as it relates to HPA access and hormones overall, drop the word thyroid below to get our HPA access hormone guide and video that goes along with that. As Ryan and I have been talking about, like there's just a bigger picture when it comes to thyroid overall. So Ryan, what would you say is like your biggest success case, you know, in working with your clients in thyroid? Like, who is it that really stands out to you where you just are, you know, totally mesmerized by the results that you were able to get them and, you know, being the solution for them? Like, do you have any really great stories to share?
I had a client that I started working with roughly about 2 years ago, and she had practitioners had previously run a TSH test for her, but it was always kind of that classic case where they didn't run a full thyroid panel. It was TSH only, and it was above what we would consider to be an optimal range. So it was kind of dismissed as not being a problem. So I suggested that we run a full thyroid panel, and I believe her thyroid peroxidase antibodies, her TPO, was around 700 or 750, right?
Yeah.
And her thyroid hormones, like her T3 and her T4, were super ultra low. Now, this client was overweight, significantly overweight, and was also another one of her symptoms was that every day that she got home from work, she would fall asleep and take a nap. And I told her, I said, that's not normal, right? Because she was like, really? I was like, yeah, you shouldn't need to have to. And that's the thing, we're so used to just feeling crappy that we just learn to deal with it, right?
Yeah.
Like the last thing a fish would ever notice is water, right?
Right.
So we just
That's a great phrase.
dealing with our symptoms and not even thinking anything of it. And so I explained to her that, look, just because you experience this every day doesn't mean it's normal. So, of course, like you had mentioned, we don't diagnose or treat anything, but we did run a thyroid panel, and I pointed out to her that it looked like there was significant thyroid dysfunction going on, and that I referred her out to an endocrinologist that put her on thyroid medication, put her on a desiccated thyroid hormone, and it changed her life instantly within a week. She started losing weight. She no longer needed to take naps anymore. She was crying with me on the next consult when we got on. She just mostly because she just could not believe no doctor that she had ever worked with had ever run the right labs for her thyroid.
Wow.
And it on the one hand it kind of broke my heart, but on the other hand it was just beyond rewarding to get that result for her, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So after that, did you work with her to,
Yeah.
instill like some of the natural healing protocols to help her like support her thyroid in different ways and get better too?
Yeah, absolutely. That was very much just the very beginning. I had, with all the symptoms and her history that she described, that was the first thing in my mind was like, this sounds like a thyroid issue. As you start doing this for a long time, you can start to kind of pick out what you might predict.
Yeah.
You see on lab work, and that was just one of those ones where I really had a hunch that it was a thyroid issue. So once we kind of knocked that out, we ran a GI map, and we saw, I believe she did have a parasite. It was blasto, actually. It was Blastocystis hominis, which again you'll see a lot with Hashimoto's. So we worked on that. We worked on doing some heavy metal detox and liver support stuff based on what was showing up on her HTMA. And I believe after about 6 months to a year of working with her, she was able to bring her antibodies down a good 60% or so.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's really amazing.
Totally awesome. Because, most of the time you'll be told that there's nothing you can do about antibodies. It's just something that you should ignore, and that there's no interventions that you can use to get that under control. But that definitely hasn't been my experience because, I've brought them down personally between 80 to 90%.
Yeah.
They're all, FDN practices.
Same here. And I mean, I've seen clients with antibodies up at like 1,300, and we've gotten them down to like 200 before by just doing these like holistic lifestyle changes that are guided by the test results. The test results provide us with the objective data to guide the recommendations and figure out, what it is that they need and to educate them about what's going on in their body. And it's so amazing. So
Yeah.
as we start to wrap up here again, for anybody that's been listening, if you want to learn more about just the overall big picture, HPA access as it relates to thyroid and kind of what we're talking about in terms of thyroid, go ahead and drop the word thyroid below to get our HPA access hormone guide and video that goes along with that. And Ryan, for our people, kind of last thing for them is, what would be one tip or resource that you would give to the health coaches out there that are working with thyroid clients, or even to, the person that's watching us that might be dealing with a thyroid issue that's trying to heal it themselves?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we had mentioned some of those resources earlier. Like, I think that Isabella Wentz is a really great resource to check out and start. I would also consider looking into and doing an autoimmune paleo type diet. That was a tremendous part of my healing journey was going AIP. So I think that's something I'll very often implement with my autoimmune clients, and sometimes that alone can lower antibodies significantly, right?
Mm-hmm.
And lay the foundation for nutrient density and gut healing and all those things before you even move into some of these more advanced protocols, right?
Yeah.
And I think just more generally, just believing that healing is possible, right? Starting with that mindset is super important, because you have to want it, you have to believe it intrinsically, and it has to motivate you to believe that there are things that can be done that are within our control, within our life state, our choices from day to day with our diet and lifestyle. Um, and that I think has to be the spark or that initial impetus to do this kind of work, because it can be a journey, and it's a lifelong, right? It's not like you heal your gut and then you get like a diploma, and then you go back to drinking beer and eating pizza every night or whatever, right?
Right.
It's a transition into a totally different lifestyle and paradigm. It's not all gonna, like, some of the stuff we're talking about with TSH and HPA axis, it might sound like almost overwhelming, but it's very much a process, and you learn very little by little, right? When I first started, like I said earlier, I didn't even know what the thyroid did in the body. Now I'm a thriving practitioner with a full practice, and I'm helping clients all over the country to help get their health back on track.
Yeah. And you and I are both proof of being able to
Yeah.
get better and manage your thyroid naturally. I mean, I put my Hashimoto's into remission within 6 months by applying the FDN principles. And just like you, I have a thriving practice. I work with clients in Australia that are struggling with thyroid issues and looking for those resources there too. I don't know if you can see, but I've got like my butterfly up here.
Yeah.
That's my little thyroid emblem. Like, I
Oh,
saw that in a store. I was like, oh, I'm going to put this on my wall to represent like overcoming the thyroid, challenges. And I think something that I want to point out to, especially the health coaches or aspiring health coaches that are listening to us right now, is that Ryan and I were both working through our health issues as we were helping other people. And I want to bring that up because a lot of times health coaches feel like, well, how can I help somebody when I haven't healed myself? And to your point, it's not like you heal your gut and you get a diploma and you move on. Like, I really think that health is an ongoing journey. And as I say, like, life still happens. Like, Hashimoto's was not my original health issue when I came into being an FDN practitioner. I was struggling with other things. And then I got slapped with mold in my home later on. But part of what helped me heal so quickly and get into remission was I was already practicing a lot of the things that we do in FDN as practitioners for our clients. So I was able to catch it really quickly. And I'd already had like such a foundation of support for my body to kind of rebound, which was amazing. And I'm going to add a little bit to to the answer to your question, in that I think that the FDN course is also a huge tip or resource for people, because as you mentioned earlier, you get to do some of the testing yourself going through the course. And for
right.
both you and I, it uncovered those healing opportunities for us to, heal the issues that we had going on, restore thyroid function even more. So that's really cool about the training that we do is that you get to do it on yourself as you go through the course and as you learn it, and then you get to come out and do it with others. And so for any of you out there that are wanting to get involved in this work, you're wanting to work on yourself, our course counselors are always standing by. If you're interested in learning more about that, drop the word course below, and our course counselors will reach out to you and share a little bit more information about, the training that we both have done to talk about the things that we're talking about today. So thank you so much, Ryan, being here. Ryan and I have been friends for a long time. We both kind of got into mold at the same time. We say we're part of the old school mold crew.
Right. Yeah.
And our community is so great. Ryan, it's been so wonderful to watch your journey and to be interviewing you today. So thank you for your time. And as we wrap up, again, you guys, if you want more information about the thyroid and HPA access stuff, drop the word thyroid below the video to get our HPA access hormone guide and video that goes along with that. So thank you so much, Ryan.
Thank you so much for having me. I'll come back anytime.
All right. Have a great day, everyone.
Yep. Have a good weekend, guys.